wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm. All I wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm.
Jayse, you know, our experience and our history goes back, how long we know? About a decade now?
Almost. Yeah.
And who was the guy that married you and your beautiful wife?
Is this guy?
In my, dude, I married them. Was it in my backyard?
Yeah.
And
under the pyramid. Yeah.
So I just want you guys to know Jayse's family. He's a very, very gifted individual. And it's going to be funny looking back later, especially after the RV.
Yeah.
This is my crypto guy, Jayse. Ladies and gentlemen, for Team Light. And I just want you guys to know that we're going to have all the financial systems plugged in. And the whole point is to have the most abundant, free-flowing system we possibly can. You know what I'm saying? Jayse, you're the man for that. I love you.
Thank you, bro.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Jayse.
All right, guys. How's it going? Thank you, Rion, for introducing me. So just show of hands first. Who owns crypto here? Oh, sweet. That's pretty good. Okay, so about half. And who is interested in like wanting to buy crypto but doesn't really know where to start? Okay, about the other half. All right, we don't need that mic. So this is crypto and the golden age. Basically, we're going to be talking about why crypto in the first place. So what is this all about? What are we doing with the financial system? We're transmuting it. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about financial sovereignty, which is, for me, the primary fundamental reason why crypto is so important right now and why I got into it. And then, you know, becoming your own bank, essentially, where you don't need a bank account anymore. You don't need the central banks to actually operate. And then generating passive income, decentralized, you know, kind of like generating interest in a bank, but getting way more and you're totally in control. We're going to talk about the great transfer of wealth. And then we're going to talk about XRP and the quantum financial system assets. So quick show of hands, who's heard of XRP? Okay, everybody. Who owns XRP? Okay, sweet. So that's kind of the main focus of what we're about. I own many cryptos, but XRP is the main one that I feel people in this community are being drawn to. So we're going to talk about that as well. So quick background on myself. Who am I? I studied aerospace engineering at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. So that's over by Vandenberg Air Force Base in California on the coast. I was the president of the Aerospace Society there. And that's when I had my spiritual awakening. So that is a whole talk within itself that I'm not going to go into. But basically, I was learning about black budget programs and stuff that was going on. One of my professors was like one of the main guys at Skunkworks. He was the head of the F-22 project, and he was designing all this crazy black budget stuff. And that propelled me into my awakening, along with some psychedelic adventures that blew open my third eye at the same time, very synchronistically. So I started a YouTube channel called Cosmic Origins in 2017. And then in 2019, my wife and I, Alexis, we traveled in our van for a year. That's when we started really connecting with Rion more and going to the conferences. And if any of you guys were at that conference back in 2019, you might remember our little white puppy, Apollo. He was there. And then we moved to Sedona in 2020 after that. Very synchronistically, it just fell into place. And bought my first crypto right after the COVID crash, March of 2020. XRP was at 17 cents. I was pretty opposed to crypto at the time. I thought it was the new world order. pretty much just generalized everything. I didn't get a good feeling about Bitcoin. I didn't get a good feeling about Ethereum. Somebody told me XRP, 17 cents. That was the number I look out for. When I hear that number, I pay attention. And thank God I did, because it's changed my life. So I bought XRP, March 2020, 17 cents. I was able to turn about 5,000 into 50,000 in about 9 months, which showed me what was possible. And I was like, I'm going all in on this. This is what I want to do. And after about a year, I started coaching people in 2021. And then a year later, I launched the Conscious Crypto Academy, which is my online school. And I've been doing that for just about 3 years now, since March of 2022. And since then, I've been able to generate multiple 6 figures within crypto. So it's really been a life-changing thing for me, and it's just getting started. And I really believe this is going to be one of the most fundamental life-changing events that's going to catalyze much more within the ascension process and the disclosure process that we're going through. So transmuting the financial system, giving the power back to the people. Obviously, you're at this event, you know we're going through an ascension, right? Everything is shifting, and the financial system is a big part of that. It's not going to be staying what it was. Money, I think, will continue to be a part. Energetic exchange and value transfer will be a part of our current system. And basically what we're doing is we're getting rid of the parasites within the financial system. So you can think about a financial system, our global economy, as being like a torus field. You know, just like the earth or our personal bodies, it should be a healthy, dynamic equilibrium. But unfortunately, we've had parasite infestations pretty much since the beginning. You know, the Babylonian money magic system, it's been happening for thousands of years, if not longer. And so we're going through a global parasite detox, both literally, but also within this financial system. And so the future is decentralized. We're leveling the playing field. You've probably heard that term before. And that's truly what's going on. We're going to be in a financial system where it no longer siphons energy from us, but it's actually feeding us and helping us go through our conscious ascension process. So why crypto? Well, the whole point is that it's decentralization. No one entity or country controls the whole system. And there are varying degrees of decentralization in different kinds of cryptos. So it's something to research and understand deeper, which is what we teach in our academy. But the idea is that, you know, it's global, and you have people from all over the world that are contributing to that financial system that are a part of that validation process. So it's not like, you know, JP Morgan or, you know, Wells Fargo, where it's top down and what they say goes. If they don't like your political opinion, like, you're out, right? Which is not good. So cryptos like XRP in particular, you know, there's a misnomer that all crypto is competing with gold or competing with the dollar as like an alternative. And, you know, CBDCs are a big thing out there. That's not what this is. Crypto is really the antithesis to a CBDC. CBDC being centralized, crypto being decentralized. And so XRP in particular empowers every other form of value out there. And that's the point of it, is it's not competing with anything. It's literally connecting everything, like a web of, you know, interconnected energy around the planet that's going to help gold. It's going to help silver. It's going to help the US dollar and, you know, the new treasury gold-backed dollar that is most likely going to be coming out very soon. So true financial sovereignty, becoming your own bank. In this community, I've seen countless people, you know, being in YouTube and having friends like Journey to Truth podcast. If you guys know them, they come to mind. They have their PayPal and a lot of their donation systems banned. So many content creators have had their donation systems banned, which is a way that they've stifled this whole global awakening that we're going through, right? If they can take away your money and your funding and you can't support yourself, you have to go back to working a 9-to-5 job. And so, you know, even the presidential family, the entire Trump family, had their banking access terminated. And I realized that we needed a truly permissionless, meaning you don't need anyone's permission to use it, foolproof method of storing money where no centralized group can just turn it off one day because they don't like what you have to say. So who remembers the Canadian trucker rally from a couple years ago? Okay, pretty much everybody. So do you guys know what actually happened? Okay, so basically they had all of their financial accounts shut down by the government when they were doing this. Not just their bank accounts, but their PayPals, their Venmos, their Cash Apps. Everything was terminated. Even their crypto exchanges, so Crypto.com, Coinbase, Kraken, these big platforms where most people are storing their crypto. You don't have control when it's in there. It's just like a bank. And so the government, Trudeau or whoever it was, called up the banks and these crypto exchanges, told them shut them down. And so the only way that these guys were actually able to transact remotely outside of in-person cash interactions was with private crypto wallets. So that's really the emphasis here, is that it's not just about having crypto, but you have to have it in the right place. Because if it's not in the right place, you get a scenario like FTX. Anyone remember what happened with the FTX collapse? So, there were very well-known people in there. That was Super Bowl sponsored ads. Tom Brady, all these celebrities were, getting sponsored deals with them. They were supposed to be the safest, biggest exchange out there that was going to change the world. And Sam Bankman-Fried, the youngest billionaire, self-made at 29, was supposed to be the next prodigy that they were putting on Time Magazine and everywhere. And then what happened was it went insolvent, right? They were lending out all this money to other platforms. They were over leveraging themselves, and it all collapsed on itself. People lost millions and billions of dollars, celebrities and people like us alike, little guys and big guys. So the key to financial sovereignty is private wallets and private keys. So a private wallet is what allows you to have full control. There's a couple different kinds of private wallets. We'll get into that in a second. But these are two of the more famous brands. Ledger's the most famous one. This is the Decent brand. That's my favorite personal one. I've used several, and I like that one the best. But basically, when you get a private wallet, you get what's called a private key or a seed phrase. And what that does is it gives you the ultimate password into that account. So unless somebody has that private key, they can't get access to your account. No matter how much they hate what you're saying politically, socially, whatever it is, unless they have that particular password, they can't get in. Now, the caveat to that is, you have full responsibility. So if anyone else gets those keys, if you lose that, or if someone, goes in and steals it, they could get access to your funds. So it's kind of like, what was it, Uncle Ben from Spider-Man said, with more power comes more responsibility, and it's truly the case here. So the wallets give you complete control and responsibility. The private keys are your ownership. And like I was saying, the public exchanges, they are not safe because they own those private keys. So unless you're given those keys, it's not truly your crypto. Like we saw with FTX, if those places collapse, if they go bankrupt, if they get hacked, they're legally allowed to use your funds as bailout money. So it's in my opinion, not a safe long-term storage. So what we teach is buy it wherever you can, whatever your access point is, whatever website, but then get it onto a wallet right away. I think that's the most important thing. And that's what we teach in our academy, how to do that. So wallets, there's two main kinds. There's hardware wallets and there's software or app wallets. App wallets are free. You can go download one right now. In fact, the Decent wallet I just showed you, there's a free app on there. Yes?
I get completely confused with this. When you talked about, was it Kraken? What have you done?
Yeah.
Public.
Mm-hmm.
You said that's public. So if you buy on that, can you move it to a
Yes.
hardware wallet?
Yeah, so for the cameras, the question is can you move it to a hardware wallet on, yeah, wherever you have your crypto, you can move it anywhere else. So that's what's nice. You're not restricted in where you can move it. Basically, as long as you can get a hold of it, you should be able to move it to any kind of wallet. So yeah, good question. So the app wallets are free. That's kind of a good intro. You get an app wallet, the Decent, spelled this way if you look that up. They have a free app wallet. You can go and buy the hardware wallet later, upgrade to it. The general rule of thumb that I work with our clients is if you have more than 5 times the cost of the wallet in crypto, then it's a good idea to get it. So if the wallet costs $100 and you've got over $500 in crypto, then it's a good idea to get one. And you could start with an app wallet and basically work your way up to getting cold storage wallets. And then ultimately, I think it's good to kind of have several and spread it out. And that's one of the strategies we teach as well. A big question people often ask is, okay, I've got my crypto, but what am I going to do with it? How am I actually going to spend it? Is it just going to sit there? Well, like what happens with it next? So we're moving into a place very soon. It's happening right now where you're going to be able to spend your crypto directly wherever you go. So already, there's airlines, there's a lot of travel booking agencies that you can take XRP, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and spend it directly, through the website checkout. But we're also getting to a place very soon where you're going to be able to have that little device that we were looking at on the previous screen, and you'll be able to just take that to whatever store, whether that's Whole Foods down the street, Natural Grocers, or, your favorite retail outlet, and you're just going to be able to like tap it like you do with your chip on your card and spend it directly. So that's what is starting to get phased in. At the moment, the most accessible way is by getting one of these debit cards. So the exchanges offer these debit cards. They're not credit, although that's coming too. But the debit cards allow you to spend from those accounts. So even though we were saying we don't want to keep it on the exchanges long term, if you do need to spend it, like for myself, I keep 99% of my value in crypto. I keep bare minimum operating expenses in my bank account because to me, the bank is way more risky, both in terms of security, but also in terms of the opportunity. Like it's just, if it's in a bank, it's not going to grow. You're going to get maybe 1-2% a savings account minus inflation, minus interest rates and all that. So these allow you to spend directly from the exchanges, and you can kind of treat them like a checking account. So keep a little money in there if you need to spend it. You can move money there from your wallets like you were talking about. You can go back and forth, right? You're not stuck, which is really nice. And eventually you're not even going to need these because like I said, you'll just be able to spend it directly wherever you go. And one of the projects that we're invested in is focusing on that infrastructure in particular, which is a stronghold if you guys want to know. And we'll talk a little bit about some other cryptos here in a second. So let's talk about the great transfer of wealth, the greatest opportunity to create generational wealth that humanity has ever seen. And that might seem drastic or an exaggeration, but I truly don't believe it is. I think this point in history, and particularly because of what's going on with this ascension, God is providing an opportunity, God source creator, to give us the funding to essentially fulfill our dreams and our spiritual missions and create the world that we want to see. So even in the mainstream, you guys might have heard this, they're talking about $84 trillion being shifted over the next 2 decades. Now that's not even talking about crypto, that's just talking about the older generations that are starting to pass away that are holding a majority of the wealth, and that wealth is then going to be gifted and passed down to, the younger generations. And that's 84 trillion. Mainstream media is even saying that. But what they're not talking about is the creation of wealth that's going to occur with the quantum financial system and with cryptos like XRP. So let's talk about XRP for a second. It's one of the first cryptos ever created. In fact, the company Ripple, so XRP and Ripple often get conflated. XRP is the currency. Ripple Labs, is the for-profit company. So XRP was actually created separate from Ripple, and then a couple of the guys created Ripple, and they essentially donated half the supply to Ripple to then build out financial infrastructure and use XRP as the core mechanism for that financial infrastructure. So they can exist without each other, and that's really important to know because that's a big piece of misinformation that you will hear from what people call Bitcoin maxis, or really any kind of maxi, which means they only like one crypto and they hate everything else. And there's a lot of people in Bitcoin that are like that. Not that that's bad, but difference of opinion. But there's misinformation about the two. And so you often hear even the media use Ripple and XRP interchangeably. But you guys are going to know the difference. They can exist without each other. XRP can exist if Ripple goes bankrupt and goes away as a company. And even vice versa, Ripple could exist without XRP. Although I don't think it's going to do very well without it. And they don't either because they're using it. So it's consistently been in the top 5 cryptos. It used to be the number 2 crypto right behind Bitcoin, and I think it's headed back there very soon. I think it's going to pass Ethereum. It's only about a 2x in price away, actually a little bit less, from passing Ethereum in market cap valuation. And so I personally think it's also going to pass Bitcoin, and it's going to become the number 1 crypto in the world. And at that point, I think that kind of awareness is going to bring in a lot more, especially retail money, because people like to go with the safe thing generally. They want to go with the big thing that's safe and least risk. And so that's basically where I see this being headed. And we're going to talk about in a second, like how that actually plays out, what actually causes that. So it's also interesting to know, I just learned today, I didn't get a chance to throw it in the slide, but Ripple was actually created before Bitcoin came out. So Ripple as a company, before the current owners bought it, but as an idea for new financial infrastructure, was created in, I believe it was 2004. And Bitcoin was, I believe, 2010. So many years prior. And the creator of XRP, many people believe, myself included, that he's one of the creators of Bitcoin, who they call Satoshi Nakamoto. Most people think it's one person. I think it's a group of people. The people who research it generally think it's a group of people. And I think the guy who created XRP, a guy named David Schwartz, was part of that. He worked for the NSA and actually developed a patent in 1998, I believe it was, predating even that Ripple in 2004, for what would be what's called distributed ledger technology, which is this idea of a decentralized consensus mechanism, kind of like cloud computing, if you will. So what makes XRP unique? Well, it's lightning fast, and this is why we call it the quantum financial system. Quantum, instant. It can do any kind of settlement, whether it's $10, $1, 5 cents, 10 million, 20 billion, 50 trillion, 1 quadrillion, you name it, settles in the same amount of time, doesn't matter. Compare that to right now with the banking system. You got to wait 3 to 5 business days. Like, that's ridiculous. And they do that for a reason. They make a profit off of that friction in the financial system, which is the parasites I was talking about in the beginning. So this already undermines the need for the current banking system, which is called SWIFT. If you do a wire transfer, it goes through a system called SWIFT, and SWIFT doesn't actually settle funds. It just tells the banks how much they owe each other. So on the back end, they go and they settle it themselves. So this gives instant settlement for a bank, a government, people like us. It doesn't matter. Anybody can use it. It's also got near zero fees. So even if you're sending $20 billion, you're going to be paying a fraction of a penny, like 0.000001 pennies. Ridiculously small. So pretty much negligible. And send billions of dollars, and it's green. So, when you hear about crypto a lot, people are talking about mining and the opportunities with like Bitcoin mining, and it might make you think of, seeing these giant warehouses on the news where they're like, we found, an illegal Bitcoin mining operation under this school in New Jersey, or, there's been a lot of stories like that because they siphon ridiculous amounts of energy. One Bitcoin transaction can power a home for a few weeks. Isn't that crazy? Like, why are people doing that? It's ridiculous. So that's called proof of work. The concept of mining, it's already outdated. XRP doesn't do that. There's no mining. We'll take questions at the very end. But actually, go ahead.
No, you use the word mine. I get so confused with what you mean by mining. How can you mine something that you can't see, feel, touch?
So the concept with mining is that they're using these essentially highly complex computers that are solving algorithms, which is just, in my opinion, a waste of energy, to create these currencies. The difference with XRP is there's no mining. It's already all created. It's actually deflationary with XRP. So the total amount of XRP in existence will always be less than 100 billion. So there was 100 billion created, and then every transaction fee, which we were saying is super small, but every transaction fee is burned, which means it's permanently deleted. And so that creates deflation over time. So you don't get this runaway inflation effect like we have with the current economy or with certain cryptos. Technically, Bitcoin does have a max supply it will reach. So even though they're mining, it will end at some point, essentially. But the main point I'm trying to drive home here is that it's green with XRP. You don't need these mining rigs, and that's outdated technology. I think in the next few years, we're going to really see some problems with Bitcoin and its scalability. It can only do 5 transactions per second, Bitcoin. So that means the more people that are using Bitcoin, the slower the network gets. It tops out at 5. There's layer 2s, as they call it, which is like third-party people building on top to try to make things faster. But as far as the Bitcoin network itself, it tops out at 5 to 7 transactions. XRP in comparison does 1,500 plus transactions per second, which is on par with what Visa does. And it can be scaled up to like 36,000 transactions per second and more in the future as we get better computers, especially quantum computing. So Bitcoin's also extremely expensive, and Ethereum. Ethereum is even more expensive. It's one of the reasons I detest Ethereum. There's also a lot of corruption going on with Ethereum. There's a great documentary that exposes It's called Rigged from the Start, the SEC's War on Crypto. It exposes how JP Morgan and the Biden SEC were collaborating with Chinese big money to undermine Ripple and kill XRP, and front run Ethereum as the new global one world currency. And so there's a lot of corruption going on behind the scenes, and the whales at the top, whales being the people that own the most, they're profiting off these massive transactions. So with Ethereum, you could send $50 of Ethereum and pay more than that in transaction fees, which is ridiculous. So to me, it's dumb. Energy inefficient, we talked about that. So XRP solves all these problems. It was literally created by Bitcoin developers to be a better Bitcoin, to solve the problems of Bitcoin and the scalability issues. Cross-border payments. So currently what Ripple is aiming to do with XRP, their biggest mission at the moment, is to replace the current cross-border payment system. So we just talked about SWIFT, SWIFT being that banking system that doesn't even settle funds. They're trying to either replace SWIFT or integrate with it using XRP, where all of the money in the world, and you'll hear this term, all the money with XRP, that's where this is going. It's called tokenization, meaning every form of value in the world, whether that's gold, silver, national currencies, debt, derivatives. Like debt is a big one that many people don't think about, but debt will be tokenized. Hopefully we're phasing out debt completely, but even debt will be tokenized on the blockchain, meaning that value will be represented in the market cap of these currencies. And so when we talk about all the money, we don't even know how much money. I think officially the experts say there's like 14 quadrillion, but we all know there's dynasty families that have been keeping money for probably thousands of years in secret places. I know China just said they found 20 trillion in gold. And, that kind of gets into the thing with gold and silver too, that, those are also inflationary, especially as we mine asteroids. There's going to be more gold, more silver, especially as we get replication technology. You're going to be able to print gold and silver in anything you want. And I think that's really where in the future, this comes into play. And so, what does it look like? Like maybe, I don't know, 10, 20, who knows how many years, 1 year, I don't know. We're going to have to see. But many people, myself included, channelers, I don't claim to be a channeler, but I do receive information. And people are seeing that this is going to be an interplanetary, intergalactic currency, and that it's going to open us up to trade with other civilizations and ETs on a level playing field. So when you're able to print anything you want and physical scarcity becomes irrelevant, right? You're still going to have services. You won't have goods that really need, buying anymore, because you'll just be able to print whatever you want, food or whatever. But people are going to have services. There's going to be sessions. There's going to be healing. There's going to be advice. And, we could just operate on a primal bartering system, but it helps to have a representation of value to be able to trade services. And so that's where I see this going in the future. And, we got our fun Pleiadians over here and some higher density blue avians and the Akashic records. So you can think of this as a digital Akashic records of sorts. So the quantum financial system, let's talk a little bit more about what that means. So the Internet of Value is the term that's used within the Ripple and XRP communities a lot. And that's that idea of tokenizing everything, and that money will be able to be moved as quickly, as efficiently, and as cheap as getting information on the internet. Remember in the dial-up days, you'd have to wait forever. It was so slow. You get that crazy noise. Now it's boom, boom, boom. You go anywhere you want super fast. You get a Starlink. You can be in the middle of the desert. You can stream games 4K in the middle of the desert. That's where it's going with money. No more 3 to 5 days waiting. No more, oh, I got PayPal. You got Venmo. Oh, what are we going to do? That is how they're keeping us down and making money off of us. So everything is going to be instant. That's the quantum financial system. And it's, I think it's going to be beyond what we can even fathom. We're seeing what's happening right now, but it's going to develop new types of technologies and new things out of this that are going to really change the world. And I think I get into this a little bit later, but I think this is really what's going to catalyze a lot of the, say, black budget technology coming out, things that have been suppressed, Tesla technology, anti-gravitic technology, free energy technology, that, before they've been able to come in and just shut down those labs, before the internet. They could just come in, Otis T. Carr, he's one of my favorites, if you know of him, worked under Tesla. They came in, they just shut them down. So somebody I know, there's a guy named Patrick Riley, who is a developer on the XRP ledger. He doesn't work for Ripple or anything, but he's, like one of us. We can all build and develop things on these platforms. And he did something really cool where he calls himself an acquired savant, where he was in an IUD accident in Iraq, I believe it was, and instantly got downloads, super intelligence of advanced technologies, free energy, anti-gravitics, all sorts of stuff. And so he's also, kind of a savant within the crypto realm. And what he's done is he has taken his schematics for these technologies, which previously the government could come in and just swoop them all away and nobody knows, right? He minted them as NFTs on like 12 different blockchains. So if you've never heard of an NFT is essentially some kind of piece of information that's unique and digitally represented. So typically it's like a picture, right? You might have seen like the Bored Apes and things like that where they're, it's just silly art, but that's really the beginning phases. That's the experimental phases. What he's doing, I think, is really a great use of this. So basically, if they wanted to take down those schematics, they would have to take down those 12 different blockchains, which is virtually impossible. So a brilliant move, and that's one example of how this is going to help bring out those technologies. So yeah, no more friction for the elite to profit off of. It's going to undermine their system. Send money as easily as a text message or an email. That's the quantum financial system. So has anyone ever heard the term flip the switch? Raise your hands. Okay, nice. Okay, so flip the switch. That's the idea within particularly the XRP community, that there's going to be an instantaneous overnight moment of a dramatic increase of value. What I'm seeing is we could go to bed, XRP might be $2 like it is now, maybe it's $10, $20, $100, whatever, and then all of a sudden it's 1,000, it's 10,000, it's 100,000. Crazy. And don't just take it from me, especially for you guys that are, in this community. Go listen to channelers that talk about this. A friend of my wife and I, Lily Nova, if you guys know her, she channeled this as well, that it's going to, be a very quick moment. There might be some kind of black swan, big crash event that leads up to this. That's something that's been theorized a lot. But personally, I'm feeling that timeline has been averted. I think that would have happened coming into the current administration. I think the moment when that assassination attempt happened, massive timeline shift, and I think we averted the greater possibility of a black swan multi-market collapse. And that would have been the Great Reset. Like, when's the last time you guys even heard anybody talk about Klaus Schwab's Great Reset? Like, it's been a while since that's been perpetuated, because that is a dying energy. Things have shifted. And so I think most likely we're on a very smooth timeline with this, and we're not going to have to endure a crazy, cataclysmic world economic financial collapse. That's my belief, and that's my prayer and my intention as well. And so this flip of the switch moment would be that instantaneous moment where the plumbing turns on. So you can think about what Ripple and XRP have been doing is they've been creating this international plumbing around the world. And if you like codes within language, there's a lot of water codes with this. Ripple, liquidity, on-demand liquidity being an actual service by Ripple. Currency. There's this liquid water, feminine kind of energy that goes with this. And so what would happen is basically that plumbing has been built, but the water has not been run through it yet. So when the water actually turns on, that's the flip of the switch moment. That's the overnight scenario. And that would be when trillions or more of money come flowing in a moment because of complete, clear regulatory green lights, which we've not had, and we are extremely close to. There's also the hidden and stolen assets. The RV, Rion talks about the RV a lot. There's the idea of Nasara Jasara. There's a lot of different theories out there. If that does happen, like if there's a Nasara Jasara event where everybody gets, however much money, 100,000, million, millions, whatever, most likely it's going to get sent to you through XRP because, like we said, that's the most efficient way to do it. Trump just he signed an EO updating the Treasury where they're no longer going to be doing checks because they found there was like a 15 times higher likelihood for fraud when they send out checks. So they are going with a virtual payment system, which I believe this is going to be deeply integrated with. So another reason to own assets like this. So what could XRP be worth? I kind of threw out a couple numbers earlier. $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, that seems really high. Within the realm of, sane people, they say, oh, $5, $10 maybe, $20, maybe $100. But within the spiritual and esoteric and conscious awakening communities, repeatedly, people are getting this number, 10,000 plus. 10,000 seems to be the base number. There's a guy, have you heard of Brandon Briggs, the prophet who predicted the Trump assassination? Like down to exactly how it happened. He said like 3 months before it happened that he would get grazed in the ear, he would fall to the ground and be dramatically reborn for God and for the people. And literally it's like exactly how it played out. He also has said over and over and over, and he's gotten more vocal with it because he's getting more confident with this being the message that God is telling him to spread, that XRP is going to $10,000 and that it's going to be the life raft. He is under the impression that this black swan event is coming. Like I said, I think we've maybe averted that timeline, but if it does happen, he has said that, and I agree too, if it does happen, it's going to be the life raft. It's going to be the thing that saves people. And if it does happen, there could be a drastic, gap in the kind of the class structure economically, where there's going to be people who are really struggling for a little bit, and then there's going to be people who are in these assets that are like millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires all of a sudden. And again, I don't think that that's going to play out that way. I think we've averted that. But if it does, that will eventually even itself out. And we're going to go from, we're basically flipping the pyramid is the way I see it. Flipping the structure, and then maybe we're going to kind of make more of a circle or a torus field where things are more even instead of being a more rigid structure like that. So what could actually drive, well, we'll get into that to the next slide, what could actually drive it. But this is David Schwartz. I endearingly call him a space Sasquatch, because that's just the vibe I've got from him. He's the creator of XRP, the main architect. It's funny, because after I called him a space Sasquatch on my YouTube channel, like within that same few days, he posted a picture of him eating a hot dog at a stand that said Sasquatch. And I was like, that's pretty interesting. He is probably one of the top cryptographers in the world. He does a lot of coded stuff in his posts. So if you want to kind of follow some of the coded stuff, go follow his X page. This is one of the things. This is the only price that I've ever seen him publicly reference. And he's not saying it's going to go to this, but again, coded language. You got to read between the lines. He's talking about the price of XRP. He says it can't be dirt cheap. That doesn't make any sense. If XRP cost $1, they would need 1 million XRP to move $1 million, right? If XRP cost $1 million, they need 1 XRP to move $1 million. And that's a lot more efficient on the blockchain. So essentially, the higher the XRP price, the more it reduces the market impact, making it cheaper and more efficient, and the better the whole system operates, the higher the price of XRP is, which is why I think, on top of it being deflationary in the supply going down, basic economics, supply and demand inverse, as supply goes down, demand will go up. I think this will be an ever appreciating asset for as long as it exists. So, i.e., the higher the price of XRP, the better the system operates. The price has to be high to facilitate trillions of dollars in transaction payments. So, a lot of people who are anti-XRP will say, well, how are you going to get quadrillions of dollars into this market to get a price like $10,000? Because it would be in the quadrillion in terms of the market cap. And what people don't understand is that market cap, which is the valuation of the market, doesn't actually need that amount of money to flow into the market. All it needs is the people who hold it to not sell below a certain price. So market cap in an equation is just equal to price times the circulating supply of whatever that asset is. And so all that has to happen is that XRP is being used by the banks and the governments and the average people like us. But primarily, it's being intended by Ripple to be the back-end infrastructure to run the QFS. All it needs is that the agencies that are using it to actually need to use it as a technology and not want to sell it below $10,000. It just has to be that valuable to them. You don't need quadrillions to flow in. So you could literally have $10 flow into the market, and it could be a quadrillion-dollar market cap, as long as the people who have it are like, okay, we need to use this as a technology. We're not putting it out on the open market, which is what's happening. This is the liquidity, as they say, is drying up for XRP, meaning the amount of XRP on the public exchanges is quickly evaporating because it's being bought not only by the institutions, but Ripple is buying it back. They're actually going to the open market where we are, and they're buying up the XRP and then selling it to private investors for these different financial services, or sorry, private institutions for these financial services. So you don't need that much money to flow in, is the point. So the good news with all this is where people like myself, I've waited 5 years for this moment to come that we're about to enter into. There's people that have been in it a lot longer than me. You guys, maybe you've been in it for a couple years, but for most people getting into it right now, you're not going to have to wait very long because the stage is set right now. We are entering the moment of that regulatory green light clarity within the world. Obviously Trump is very pro-crypto, opposite of the Biden admin who was trying to completely destroy it. They were trying to get rid of private wallets. They were trying to get rid of all this stuff, DeFi, passive income, everything that makes crypto unique and frees the people. And so now we're going into this era where there was this lawsuit that the previous SEC had sued Ripple for the past nearly 4 years. This lawsuit was ongoing, and it just came to an end. Ripple won the lawsuit while Biden was still in. And of course they appealed, right? And it was as it was going through the appeal stage, the administration changed. And so now Trump's in, and they just officially repealed that appeal. So now they're just and this was like just within the last couple weeks. So now they're in the final stages of just paperwork to finalize this. Ripple just posted their chief legal counsel, and just for the record for people watching this, today's date is the 31st of March. So things could change very quickly. They just posted the other day that they have just finished up the last of the paperwork that they needed to finish this, essentially the ending of the appeal, and essentially saying that they approve of the appeal ending. And now within the next month or two, depending on how long the paperwork takes, that's when it'll fully be over. And that's when I believe the institutions are going to have the full green light to actually enter the market with their trillions and quadrillions of dollars, because they're going to want a piece of this, whether they're good guys or bad guys. They want a piece of this pie. Now, I do think that what's happening is very similar to what happened in the Trump admin the first time, where Trump went around to all these different countries and, he met with all the world leaders, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Russia, China, and, I think it told them what was going on, like told them the deal. This is the ultimatum. You're either going to be a part of this new alliance, you're going to be a part of the new earth and what we're creating, or you're going to have to fend for yourself, and it's probably not going to go very well for you guys. So I think the same thing is happening with Ripple and XRP, where they're going around to the banks and they're saying, hey, you guys, you can be a part of this new system, you can join us, you can redeem yourselves, or you can struggle and try to survive. But those groups are going to have to adapt because people aren't going to need banks anymore. So I think banks are going to go back to being traditional, like actual reserves, where, they actually have gold and silver for what they're representing. There's no more fractional reserve banking and quantitative easing and all this stuff. And an example that I give people about, how XRP makes things quantum, it makes gold quantum in the sense that when the banks go back to being reserves, you're going to be able to take your XRP, or sorry, if you've got a bar of gold or silver and you want to send that bar of gold or silver to your friend in the UK, right now you'd have to get on a plane and fly it there. That's the fastest way to get it there, right? Mailing wouldn't be as fast, and it's really inefficient, especially if you're got a lot of gold you need to send or a lot of silver. So you're going to be able to go to your local bank, whether that's a new bank, like I think Ripple's going to become their own bank. Maybe some of the old banks will redeem themselves and be saved, but you're going to be able to go and you're going to be able to say, okay, here's my bar of gold. They're going to take it, they're going to put it in their reserves, they're going to switch that in their system to digital gold, and then swap that digital gold into XRP as a bridge asset. They're going to send that XRP to your friend's bank in the UK. The XRP is going to get there in 2 to 4 seconds, and then they're going to liquidate that into their bar of gold that they pull out from their vault in the back. And then all the value is balanced. And within a matter of minutes or less, you've just sent gold across the planet quantumly. And that's unheard of right now. That's an incredible new thing that's going to happen. So QFS cryptos, obviously we're talking about XRP. These are some of the other ones that we focus on in our Conscious Crypto Academy. So XLM is a popular one. Stellar, as it's known as well, is kind of the sister to XRP. Stellar is positioned to be more of the front-end retail money, where XRP is more of the back-end big money. So Stellar might be the blockchain that you're interacting with more when doing payments and retail, and especially merchant stuff. So, if you guys are vendors or you own a store or whatever, you take payments, most likely Stellar is going to be a big part of that. SHX, this is actually my favorite one behind XRP, even more than Stellar, because it's the bridge and the baby between XRP and XLM. It connects the two, and they are focusing on creating the infrastructure for the merchants. So, if you were to go buy a drink in the back, you would, instead of going with like Square or Clover, the traditional kind of systems that we've seen, I think it's going to be Stronghold that's going to win in that battle. And they provide crypto cash back essentially for both parties involved. So there's a reward system for both the merchant and the customer in that system. So that's a big one. It's super undervalued. So one of the things that we're doing is we're looking at what are the ISO 20022 coins. ISO is the International Standard Organization. 20022 is the financial messaging standard that's being implemented internationally. So all money, whether it's banks, crypto, whatever, is going to have to be compliant with that standard if it's going to be used internationally. Bitcoin, Ethereum, pretty much all the top cryptos besides XRP and XLM that you heard of are not ISO compliant. So, who knows what's going to happen? I don't know. But I think that the ones that are compliant with this are going to be the winners. And so all the ones that we focus on are compliant with that. And we also look for what Ripple's investing in. We learned follow the money in the negative sense in terms of, where's BlackRock investing? Where's all these groups investing? We want to see where the corruption's going. But now we're following the money in the positive sense. I like Ripple as a company. I trust them. I vetted energetically their team. I vibe with them. And I want to see what they're investing in. I want to see where they're putting their money because I want to be, a part of that. And so all of these have been given funding through Ripple. And they're also connected to XRP on a blockchain level too. So XDC is another popular one. Sologenic is the biggest layer 2 on XRP, meaning it's built on top of the XRP ledger and it runs on it. And they're the ones that are actually tokenizing the stocks, the bonds, the gold, and everything on the ledger. So they're going to be the ones that actually bring over the entire stock market to the blockchain, into XRP in particular. And Corium is their other project. That's a big passive income earner for us, along with Flare, which I think we're going to get to in the next slide here. So decentralized finance, DeFi for short. This is really kind of the end goal in terms of what we teach in our academy, where we want to get you guys with setting this stuff up, where not only are you getting the market value appreciation of these assets, but you can actually generate more crypto, either while you're waiting for the market or, especially if XRP and these assets go to really high values and you become a millionaire or more, billionaires, which I think many people in our group are going to be, you're going to be able to generate insane amounts of interest on those so that you don't even have to sell your crypto at that point. You're going to be able to live off of and create with just the interest you're generating from these assets. So Corium, the one I was telling you about, that's our main highest earner, 25 to 50% annual returns for that one, depending on how often you compound it. So you get to claim these rewards in real time. And this is where it's going with payroll and the workforce too, where instead of getting paid every 2 weeks, everything's going to be on the blockchain in real time. So you're going to get paid. You're going to look at your phone app, your wallet, because that's what it's going to be. You're going to look at your wallet and you're going to see just money coming in every second. No more waiting for your paycheck to come in. And so if you don't spend that, you can throw it back in that interest generating machine and compound it. And I think the example I've heard is if you had a penny a day, if you got a penny a day and that amount doubled every day, by the end of the month, it's over $1 million. So that's the effect of compounding. So if you compound this regularly, I choose to recompound it like once a week or so. But if you do it like every day, you can actually get it up to 50%, which is really crazy. So staking is that main one. Staking is the interest generation in crypto. If you ever hear people say, I'm staking my crypto, that's what it means. They're getting interest on it. It's essentially risk-free in terms of the market. There's no risk in terms of volatility and all that. You just have the volatility of the coin itself, but you don't have like a risk of losing it. You know, there's always software risks in terms of just bugs and things like that, but those are very minuscule, and that's just standard for any kind of technology. But in terms of like being able to generate passive income, it's essentially risk-free. And then you have other things like liquidity pools, which is where you provide liquidity to the market. So you could take two coins that are traded between, say, XRP and XLM, you put them in a liquidity pool, and then anytime people trade between those two assets, you get a percentage of the fees that they pay. So normally that just goes to the big banks, you know, whoever's making the markets, which is like the Warren Buffetts and the Bill Gates. Now they have what are called automated market makers, and that's the liquidity pool. So it's taking the big money from these big billionaires who are making all the profits and all the money in the markets, and now the little guys like us, we all get to participate. And if you guys have ever seen Bug's Life, you know what happens when the little guys, you know, team up to take on the big guys. So liquidity pools, yield farming, that's associated with that. That's where you can take different assets and different coins. You can even, you know, you can enter, this is where it's going to get deeper, but I'll just quickly cover it. You can enter a liquidity pool, you get an LP token that is already generating you those trading fees, but then you can sometimes take that LP token and then stake that in a yield farm. So you can just like, there's so many ways that you can stack multiple forms of passive income within just the same coins that you're using. So the opportunities are amazing. And this is being expanded and developed like in real time. Like there's new opportunities coming out literally every day, which is what we focus on in our academy. You know, I'm researching this, our team, we're constantly finding what's going on and making the most of the opportunities. And this is going to be like, you know, this is going to put everyone on a level playing field, but the big opportunity is now. It's like investing in the .com era, you know, in the late 90s, early 2000s. It will affect everyone in a positive way where even if you don't invest in crypto, it's still going to benefit your life on the back end. And now, you know, there's things like, there's ETFs, which is an exchange traded fund, which is where, you know, if you've got a mutual fund or a retirement fund of some kind, and, you know, it's diversified amongst a bunch of stocks, now XRP and Bitcoin and these other assets are going to be a part of that. And that's part of, you know, there's actually 17, there's that number again, 17 XRP ETF applications that are pending, that as soon as this lawsuit fully wraps up with this appeal I was telling you about, it's going to have that green light. And so that's going to be a big deal, because that means like your sister or your mom or your grandpa who would never buy crypto, if they've got one of these funds, they could all of a sudden be exposed to these assets without even knowing it. And then we have Web3, which is kind of an extension of this, where it's the decentralized internet, where now you don't need to rely on like a centralized Facebook or a centralized, you know, whatever kind of website. They're going to be more and more decentralized, where your login is your wallet within itself. So you're not going to have to do all this identity stuff. It's anonymous. The blockchain is transparent in terms of you can see everything, but you don't know whose identity is connected to it. So, you know, I like the model and the law of one of the density model. I think we're moving into the fourth density. Some people call it 5D, whatever, you know, resonates with you. But in this new era we're moving into, we know we're going to be telepathic. Everything's going to be transparent. And so I know transparency freaks some people out because of the corruption in terms of money. You don't want Big Brother looking at, you know, where all your funds are going. But ultimately, this is where it's going. Everything's going to be transparent. And so it's transparent, but it's anonymous. So, you know, we'll see how that evolves over time. If, you know, there's going to be ID that's required. But I think from what we've heard from Trump so far, they're going to be honoring the anonymity of the blockchain. And so let's talk about divine guidance, because this is like spiritually what I think is really important right now to watch. I've noticed, like over any other crypto, the people in these communities are feeling guided to XRP. And that's how I was. I didn't trust any of the other ones in the beginning. Nothing felt good to me until I heard about XRP. And then it was just, you know, that instant knowing, the body chills. You get, you know, a full knowing sometimes, and you just can't explain it logically. But fortunately, we can explain it logically. And we just went through, like, you know, all the numbers of how it can actually happen. So, you know, I've had people tell me crazy stories. I've had literally one woman told me that she had a dream that a golden ET came to her, a light being, and said, buy XRP and go to Jayse for help. He's going to help you. So she booked a call with me and joined. And like, it's been so many crazy stories like that, either intense divine guidance, you just get that download like I did, or there's a dream or a vision, or just like a strong knowing, like a gut like pull to it. But there's a reason for that. And I believe it's the people who are meant to have this money in the new financial system. When we're flipping the pyramid, I think it's the people who, I think God is basically giving the people who, source creator knows will use that money for the greater good and to be of service to create the new earth rather than use it for corruption like it traditionally has. And then there's people who absolutely hate XRP, and you can maybe draw some conclusions as to why those people hate it so much intuitively, and what they might be doing with the kind of wealth, buying Lambos and mansions and that kind of stuff instead of like building healing centers and cities of light, which is what we're trying to do in our group, is create a network to actually build these infrastructures. So funding your spiritual mission, I think that's what this is really about. Rion talks about the cities of light all the time. I'm feeling that too. I feel like in Sedona, this is going to be obviously a big hub of the new earth, and places like Shasta, Hawaii, places overseas in China. Like there's so many different energetic hotspots on the planet. And I'm feeling guided to creating healing centers and communities in particular. But everyone's got their unique thing, which is what makes this so cool, is that pretty much everybody that's come to me for help has had some idea, if not like already a plan, or just at least like an inspiration of what they would do. They're like, oh man, I would create like these awesome schools that do this, and the children get to actually play outside and they get to learn this way, but I just don't have the money for it. And those are the people that are feeling guided to XRP. Education systems, communities, the advanced technologies like we talked about, minting those on the blockchain. So this is going to be, I think, one of the main catalysts that propels the acceleration of creating the world that we really want to see. And so our group is called Conscious Crypto Academy. We are online academy of over 100 people, a close spiritual community. Everybody in there is on our vibe. I kind of expected at some point that there would be like, people on different vibes, but it hasn't been. Like everyone's been on the same page, which is really cool. And it's just really amazing to see. It's just been validating this whole time. And we all share the synchronicities that we're getting about the different assets. So like that Corium one I was telling you about, that gives crazy high percentages. Like all the time, people in our group were posting pictures. Oh my God, it says Core on the side of this truck, or there's literally the logo over here. Or like one guy saw his name on a truck with the logo, and it continuously pops up. And XRP too. If you guys ever see the number 589, that's kind of the 1111 of the XRP world. And we could do a whole presentation on that, but I won't go into that. But if you see 589, it's the 1111 of this. And so in our group, we go super in depth. I wish I could go more in depth technologically and with everything we're talking about today. But that's what our academy is for. We really go in depth with like how the technology works, making it really easy. Some people come in and they barely know how to use their computers. That's all good. Some people don't know how to open the Zoom call. That's all good. We've been able to help those people out. So if you feel like you're tech challenged, or you're not going to be able to make it work because it's just too complicated, like the biggest feedback that I've heard from my students is that I'm able to break it down in a really easy to understand pieces that are digestible and then able to implement it easily. So it's been really nice to hear that. And we do weekly coaching calls. So we literally meet every week, every Sunday. It's like our Sunday service. And we go over questions about what you're going over in the course. We cover updates and news. We talk about world events, kind of geopolitical space, whatever's happening. And then we always go into like fun spiritual and disclosure topics at the end, talking about whatever the relevant thing is, whether it's the New Jersey drones or, whatever's happening in, the current kind of space politically with Trump or whatever it is. We talk about parasite cleansing. We talk about fasting. We talk about everything that you would hear at like these conferences we go into. So everything's fair game. And then we kind of all bring it full circle to crypto. And yeah, we've got over 100 people. So it's been really awesome. We've been doing it for over 3 years, and it's just been a really incredible gift to have this community. And I truly believe that the majority of people in our community, and you guys as well, holding some of these assets, are going to be millionaires, billionaires, and probably some trillionaires out there, the first trillionaires. So it's quite a lot to kind of really fathom and understand. But I think over the next few years, we're really going to see this unfold. and you're gonna be able to look back and go, whoa, like I got a little preview of what was gonna happen. And there's probably gonna be a lot more, and it's just gonna be so fascinating. I'm very excited to see how this all unfolds, because I think it's gonna be more magical than we really could have ever fathomed. And with synchronicity and the way spirit works, things just tend to be a lot more beautiful than you realize sometimes. So our vision is to create that international community and build the infrastructure of the new earth. If you guys want to learn more about how to join, you can book a free consultation call with me. You can come talk to me afterward, and we can set it up, free 30-minute call, and we'll see where you're at. You can share with me if you want your financial situation. You don't have to, whatever you're comfortable with. But that's a free, whether you want to join or not, free 30 minutes that we can just chat about, where you're at and what you're looking to do. So if you want to book a free call, you can scan that. If you don't know how to use a QR code, just open your camera and point it at that thing, and then click the little button that pops up. Try not to book it for tomorrow, because I'm going to be driving tomorrow, but anytime after tomorrow will be good. I'll leave that up for a second. The link is there too. And then right after this, if we have time, we can do some questions. And then on the next slide, I've got QR with all my social media. So, okay, I think everyone's good. So this is it's like my link tree, but it's through a different service. This is all my social media links. So if you want to follow Instagram, YouTube, Telegram, we have a private Telegram group for this academy, but I've also got a public one that is really awesome as well, that we talk about, all this stuff. Yeah. And that's the social media one again. So yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much. Thanks for hanging out, and really looking forward to creating this new world with you guys.
Put your hands together one more time for my brother Jayse.
Thanks, bro.
Hey, you absolutely crushed it. I got something to say real quick. Integrity and trust is the number one thing that everyone wants to know and feel, especially when they're dealing with their own financial situation. You can trust Jayse. This is my boy. He's a good dude. Each and every one of you, if you're just getting into crypto, ask Jayse your questions, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you. One more time, give Jayse.
All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here.